There are days when silence screams louder than any siren. And there are places where silence isn't heard, it's dismissed. In this old neighborhood, where every house hides a story and every glance dodges discomfort, a child stopped everything. Without saying a word, it was a gesture, a barely noticeable movement. But it changed the fate of 3 women scarred by what was never spoken. One of them, too old to be taken seriously. Another, too privileged to admit she'd failed. And the third, far too small to be heard. At least, until now. You might call it coincidence. You might even say it's an exaggeration. But what if I told you that a little girl's stone drawing carried the same symbol found in a lost letter from 20 years ago? What if I showed you that what looked like a child's game was, in truth, a cry for help coded in gestures, spirals, and circles? Because some pain crosses time. Some traumas find new bodies to whisper what no one ever wanted to hear. And when that happens, closing your eyes won't help. Because the past always finds its way back. This story doesn't begin with a report or an obvious crime. It begins with an old woman on her porch, watching the world pass by like someone who's already lost everything. And with a child who suddenly stops in front of her and raises her hands. No one understood, but she did. That moment was a calling, a silent invitation to something with no name, yet already pulsing between them. But where there is listening, there is resistance. And the deeper their connection grew, the more it disturbed everyone else. Religious leaders, neighbors, professionals. They all grew uneasy with what they couldn't explain. After all, how could a woman with no formal training know so much about children who don't speak? Why did a girl who had never said a word start communicating only inside that house? And why did everything seem to circle around an old doll, kept for 2 decades on a dusty shelf? When faith challenges logic, some would rather destroy the bridge than walk across it. But this isn't just about faith. And it's not only about trauma. It's about what happens when love continues, without proof, without guarantees, even when everyone says it's time to give up. A woman cast out by her community, a daughter locked in silence, a mother torn between public judgment and her own fierce instinct to protect. When these 3 forces collide, the story becomes more than a story. It becomes repair. And when that happens, time itself bends dots to take a deep breath. Because what you're about to see isn't easy to explain, but it's impossible to forget. A missing granddaughter, a daughter who doesn't speak, a woman everyone ignored until she decoded the impossible. Get ready for a journey of gestures, memories, revelations, and reunions that will make you look at silence in a whole new way. Because when pain finds no voice, it draws. And when someone finally understands the drawing, nothing stays the same. But before listening to this exciting story, if you are not yet subscribed to our channel, subscribe now and become part of our community. The sun barely brushed the moss-draped trees when Miss Cora adjusted the lace scarf on her head and sat on the creaky porch rocker. Steam from her hibiscus tea drifted upward as her sharp eyes scanned the quiet dirt, road like they were searching for more than movement. Footsteps, distant horns, murmuring neighbors. But it was silence that caught her breath. A little blonde girl in a blue dress stood frozen on the sidewalk, staring straight at her. Slowly, the girl raised her hands and moved them in slow circular patterns, eerily graceful. Miss Cora didn't flinch. She simply placed her cup on the railing and narrowed her eyes. A chill ran down her spine. No one else seemed to notice that suspended moment in time. Luna said nothing, not a word. But the air cracked open like a curtain pulling back between 2 forgotten worlds. Across the street, a sharp voice called, "Luna, come here." The girl hesitated, reluctant to break the gaze. Then she turned and shuffled off, as if something precious had just been lost. Miss Cora didn't move. Her scarf fluttered in the damp Georgia breeze. She didn't speak, but a name rang in her chest like a long-forgotten hymn, Amara, 20 years gone. And it still burned like yesterday, impossible. And yet, that gesture, those circles in the air, just like before. The next morning, Miss Cora's cottage felt quieter than usual. She was tending to her herbs when a knock startled her. 3 deliberate taps. Wiping her hands on her faded dress, she opened the door. A well-dressed woman stood there, poised but exhausted, with red-rimmed eyes. "I'm Clara, Luna's mother," she said with hesitation. Cora simply nodded with a gentle smile. "She hasn't stopped pointing toward your house," Clara added. "Wouldn't eat, wouldn't speak, just kept insisting. Somehow." Cora stepped aside. "Then come in. The tea's still warm." Inside, the air was thick with lavender, laurel, and memory. Rag dolls lined the couch like quiet witnesses. Luna stepped in without hesitation, touching the quilt, ringing a small chime, and stopping cold in front of a high shelf. Her eyes locked on a handmade doll in a mustard dress. She didn't touch it, just lifted her hands again, slow circles, more intense this time. Miss Cora froze. Her knees went weak. That doll, it was Amara's final gift before she vanished. She had called it the Sentinel. Clara watched, stunned. She never behaves like this. Never. Luna began spinning slowly, murmuring sounds that weren't quite words, but not nonsense either. Miss Cora lowered herself to the floor, meeting Luna's height. She said nothing, just watched, just listened. There was something sacred in the silence. She handed the doll to Luna, who clutched it like a long-lost treasure. For a fleeting second, Cora saw another child's face, a ghost from memory layered over the present. Clara tried to reason. What is this, some method? But Miss Cora pulled out a small, worn notebook filled with drawings and symbols, a tool she once used to communicate with Amara. "I've seen this before," she whispered. Luna, as if understanding, pointed to one of the drawings, then pressed her forehead to the doll. Clara sat down, overwhelmed. She hadn't felt this lost or this hopeful in months, and that terrified her, like a door opening. And no turning back. Outside, the wind rattled the windows. Inside, 3 generations breathed the same air bound by grief and flickers of hope. Miss Cora closed her eyes and felt something ancient stir. Not magic, not myth, just real. The way a storm warns with silence before it speaks. Luna reached out her hand. Cora took it gently and whispered, "It's what we're missing. That helps us understand." The final shot is of Luna cradling the doll, eyes glistening, not from tears, but connection. Clara sits stunned, clutching her purse. Miss Cora walks to the window and peers at the gray sky. "Rain's coming," she murmurs, not as forecast but prophecy. As Clara rises to thank her, Luna begins a new motion. Fast, repeating, urgent. Miss Cora turns, heart pounding. She recognizes it. A sign from an old dream. A warning. A return. Luna circles the doll like she's drawing protection. Miss Cora steps closer, breath caught. Luna stops, lifts her finger, and performs a gesture no one else could know. A sign only Amara ever used. ****. Miss Cora woke up before the sun. The ache she felt wasn't in her bones. It lived deeper, like the house itself had absorbed something heavy the day before. The doll still sat where Luna left it, and for a long moment, Cora just watched it. She brewed a bitter tea with dried leaves and settled on the floor near the shelf. Luna was coming. Clara had called early, saying the girl spent the night restless, pointing toward the window and repeating the same motions. When they arrived, Luna walked in without hesitation and sat on the floor beside Cora. Her eyes were calm, but her hands moved in spirals and door shapes. Cora watched like a scientist decoding a sacred text. Every gesture was a key. "She's trying to say something," Cora whispered, more to herself than to Clara. The mother crossed her arms, unsure. She's never reacted like this to anyone, not even me. Then Luna flipped through Cora's old notebook and landed on a drawing, a spiral inside a square. She touched it and placed her hand over her chest. Cora's heart skipped. "That's what Amara did when she meant home," she murmured. Clara stayed silent, but tears welled in her eyes. Luna lifted her hand again and made another sign, the one that meant pain. It wasn't a coincidence. It couldn't be. Cora invited them to sit on the floor. From a wooden box, she laid out old objects on a cloth. Seeds, shells, hand-drawn symbols, a tiny mirror. She understands this. It's not magic, not witchcraft. It's memory. It's communication. Clara hesitated. But Luna was already touching the pieces with reverence, as if each held a voice. Cora hummed an old tune, one her grandmother used to sing to soothe restless spirits. No lyrics, just a rhythm of the soul. Luna stopped moving. She closed her eyes and breathed. For 2 minutes, she didn't flinch. She heard it. Cora smiled. Clara said nothing. But something unknotted inside her. The next morning, the whispers reached town before the morning paper. At the bakery, 2 church ladies spoke in hushed tones. "Did you see? That strange woman is taking in children now. Clara's girl, that mute little one, so beautiful." And mixed up with that, their words were sugar-coated poison. At Sunday service, Pastor Roy stood at the pulpit, his eyes cold. We live in dangerous times. Some confuse care with superstition, faith with ritual. The ladies nodded with righteous intensity. Cora sat in the back row, clutching her Bible. She knew exactly who he meant. But she wouldn't stoop to fight fire with fire. Outside, a child waved at her from a car window. It was Luna, and in that simple motion, there was gratitude. Clara didn't get out. She only gave a cautious nod that said too much. On the sidewalk, some church members avoided Cora as if she carried something contagious. She walked past them with quiet dignity. Back home, she lit a candle in front of her mother's photo and whispered, "They don't have to understand, but I have to keep going." For the first time in years, she felt useful, alive. The cost? The same as always, to be misunderstood. That afternoon, Luna returned with a handmade drawing, leaves and twigs glued onto paper. It was a feminine figure surrounded by spirals. "Did she make this alone?" Clara asked. Cora nodded. "Not with words, with intention." The figure looked like a cross between an angel and a tree. Clara's eyes welled again. In just a few days, her daughter had started to bloom. She couldn't explain how. But there was something about this house, this woman, this silence, that healed wounds no one else saw. Cora looked at the drawing and opened a small iron box. Inside was a pendant in old spiral, Amara's favorite symbol. Without a word, she placed the necklace around Luna's neck. The girl smiled and clapped softly. She accepted it. "That means everything," Cora said gently. Clara watched with softened eyes. For the first time, she lowered her head and whispered, "I'm sorry for judging you." Cora touched her shoulder. "There's nothing to forgive. Every mother is afraid. But some are brave enough to listen, even without understanding." Outside, soft rain began to fall. Inside, something sacred took root. That night, Pastor Roy's sermon grew sharper. These women use gestures like spells and songs like snares. They prey on desperate mothers. Miss Cora listened from her porch. Her eyes closed, not in anger but knowing. What he didn't understand was that what he called witchcraft was simply a grandmother trying to rescue what the world had chosen to forget. Clara paced across her kitchen, fists clenched, while the kettle screamed behind her. Her phone buzzed nonstop on the counter, text from the church assistant, the mother's prayer group, even a local reporter. A recent headline was making rounds. Elderly woman uses symbolic rituals on autistic child. The blurred photo showed Miss Cora's porch, zoomed in with malicious intent. The caption suggested unauthorized spiritual activity involving minors. Clara slammed the phone down. They don't know my daughter. They didn't see what I saw. Still, the doubt crept in like damp rot crawling through walls. What exactly was all this? Across town, Cora was stringing dried leaves on her porch when a man in a suit approached. "Just a warning. People are talking. Be careful." She nodded without flinching. It wasn't the first time someone tried to silence her. But this time, there was a sharpness in the air. After he left, she stepped inside, lit a candle by the bookshelf, and draped her mother's white scarf over her shoulders. "Protect what is pure, Lord. Protect what is small." Her prayer was quiet, but fierce. That day, she made a decision. She would stop answering the door for strangers. Only Luna could come in. No one else. At church, tension built like thunderclouds. Pastor Roy began his sermons with scripture, but soon veered into veiled threats. Some meddle where they shouldn't, manipulating children, calling superstition, revelation. Eyes turned toward Clara, who now sat alone in the middle pew. The women avoided her during coffee hour. Whispers followed. "She's gone too far." Clara tried to stay strong. But after 3 days of not visiting Miss Cora's home, Luna regressed, rocking, banging her head, losing what progress she'd made. Clara's strength evaporated, and with it, her confidence. On the 4th day, Clara gave in. She arrived unannounced. Miss Cora opened the door and silently motioned them in. Luna rushed to the living room, grabbed the doll, and sat on the floor. Cora joined her, handing her the old gesture notebook. Luna flipped through it, then stopped at a hand-drawn image. A circle with a cross through its center. It was one of the symbols Amara had drawn in letters hidden around the house. "She's saying something. But I don't know what," Clara murmured, kneeling beside her. Cora stared at the pattern, her chest tightening. "This symbol." Cora began, swallowing hard. "It's one I found in Amara's things." It was her code for hope. She'd draw it when she wanted to say she was okay, even when scared. Clara didn't speak. Luna then took colored stones from a basket and arranged them carefully on the floor. When she finished, it was the same symbol, but made of stone. Miss Cora covered her mouth with her hands. Clara wept silently. Between them, Luna sat calm, like she'd delivered a message. "It's like she got it from someone," Clara whispered, "but who?" That night, Miss Cora climbed into the attic for the first time in years. She opened old boxes and found a yellowed letter, smelling of dust and grief. The symbol was there. But what chilled her wasn't the shape, it was the date. It was from the day Amara disappeared. The note had an unfinished sentence. "If I can't come back, look for the circles." She descended the stairs slowly, every step heavy with memory. Her heart told her this wasn't coincidence. Luna was here for a reason. And that reason ran deeper than anyone imagined. Clara, back home, stared at a photo of Luna as a baby. That same distant gaze. Always seeing something others missed. Is she speaking her own pain, or someone else's? She asked aloud. The online article still circled like vultures. But her instincts screamed louder than shame. Luna wasn't just communicating. She was revealing. Clara opened a drawer, pulled out her tablet, and searched. Child symbolism, alternative languages, transgenerational memory. The more she read, the clearer it became. These weren't just gestures, they were echoes. The next morning, Luna returned with a new creation, leaves and stones shaped into another symbol. It was the same pattern, but now surrounded by 3 concentric circles. Miss Cora dropped her teacup. Shards hit the floor. She knelt, breath shaky. 3 circles, one inside the other, she whispered. This is a cry for help. ****. Miss Cora's house was quieter than ever. Even the wind chimes were still. It was as if the objects themselves had gone into mourning. That morning, her nephew Malcolm came by dressed in a stiff suit, jaw clenched, voice like a blade. "Auntie, this is getting out of hand. You need to stop all this stuff. You can't play healer in the 21st century." Cora took a deep breath. "I'm not playing, Malcolm. I'm caring." He didn't listen. "You're 74. You live alone. Keep this up, and they'll put you in a home." She swallowed hard but didn't bow. "They'll only take me if they carry me out in silence." After he left, Cora sat on the floor with her Bible in her lap and trembling hands. She opened to a page marked with a bay leaf, Psalm 91. "He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High." She repeated the verses like someone hanging from a rope over raging waters. Tears rolled slowly down her cheeks, each one carrying a year of quiet pain. Outside, neighbors walked slower than usual. Some stared, some avoided her. Her name was circulating in the community message threads, photos, videos, distorted quotes. But inside her home, there was peace. A heavy, holy peace. Later that afternoon, Cora heard footsteps at the gate. When she opened it, Luna stood there alone, clutching something. Clara followed, breathless. She ran ahead. "I'm sorry." The girl reached out and handed Cora a folded piece of paper. Cora opened it with care. The page was covered in symbols, circles, arrows, spirals. In the center, a female figure with outstretched hands. A message, a cry. Clara stepped forward, wide-eyed. "She spent hours working on this. I didn't understand until now." Cora held the paper like it was made of glass. "This isn't just from her. It's from someone who came before her." Cora invited them in but was visibly shaken. She sat on the floor with Luna beside her, and for the first time, Clara knelt too. "She dreamed about you last night," the mother said. "Told me using gestures. Kept drawing the same symbol." Cora nodded. "I dreamed too. But not of her. I saw Amara trapped somewhere dark." The silence in the room grew heavy. Luna began to rock back and forth, then leaned her forehead on Cora's leg. "She's sensing it," Cora whispered. "But it's not from now. It's something that was buried in the past, and it's finding its way back." That night, Clara got a phone call. A deep voice warned, "If you keep bringing your daughter to that house, don't expect support from the church or the community." She hung up without answering, but her hands trembled. The threat was clear. The next day, Luna's school director called, asking about her exposure to uncertified environments. Clara was speechless, but her heart screamed rage and fear. Her daughter was finally connecting, and now they wanted to sever that fragile thread. "They fear what they don't understand," she thought, clenching her fists. Back in her room, Miss Cora lit 3 candles and sat in front of her mother's old mirror. She spoke to her silently. "Tell me if I'm wrong, Mama. Tell me if I've confused grief with purpose." In the reflection, she saw her own eyes, Amara's eyes. And just for a moment, she heard her granddaughter's voice. "Don't give up, Grandma." The words didn't come from the air. They rose from somewhere deeper, where faith and sorrow hold hands. She wrote something in the hidden journal beneath her couch cushion. "What the mind can't explain, the soul still knows." She closed it, letting a single tear fall on the leather-covered dot outside. Luna drew symbols on the porch with charcoal. Cora watched from the window. The girl drew spirals inside spirals, then 3 dots surrounding them. The same pattern Amara used to draw when she was afraid. Clara sat beside her daughter and began to draw too. 2 generations connected by something beyond reason. When Cora came outside, Luna stood waiting. Without a word, she handed over a folded page. Inside, a new symbol, a star with 3 surrounding circles. "This is new," Cora whispered. "This is a path." Clara asked, Do you think she's being used by something? Cora answered without blinking. No. She's being remembered by someone. That same night, Clara found a sketch in Luna's notebook, letters tangled together. In the center, one name stood out. Amara. The sound of rain tapping on the rooftop matched the rhythm of Miss Cora's heart. She knew something was about to be revealed, not in words, but in gestures. That morning, while sorting through an old drawer, she found a torn spiral notebook with yellowed pages. It was the manual she had created decades ago, alongside a therapist who specialized in nonverbal children. Dozens of visual symbols, hand signals, and sensory interpretations filled its pages. As she flipped through them, silent tears fell. Each image brought back a vivid memory of Amara, struggling to be understood. And now, another pair of hands so similar were trying to say what the world refused to hear. At lunchtime, Clara arrived with Luna. The girl was more restless than usual, but the moment she saw Cora, she calmed. She sat on the floor and made the sign for book, a gesture she had never made before. Miss Cora hurried to her room, grabbed the old notebook, and opened it in front of Luna. The child scanned the symbols carefully, then pointed to one in particular, one hand with the index finger raised, the other covering the mouth. Cora's eyes widened. That was the sign for secret. Clara stepped closer, alarmed. Did she learn that here? Cora's voice cracked. She didn't learn it, she remembered it. Miss Cora then suggested a mirroring game. Luna would make a gesture, and she would repeat it. The girl smiled and focused. She began with simple shapes: house, flower, wind. Then she pointed to a drawing of a woman with her hair tied up and made a gesture, both hands flat against her chest, followed by a sign for pain. Clara froze and dropped her teacup. Is she talking about me? She asked, her voice trembling. But Cora was staring at the notebook. That combination, woman and pain, was exactly how Amara used to say. Someone was hiding a wound. Luna picked up a blank sheet of paper and began to draw with colored pencils. A dark room. A locked door. Small figure sitting on the floor, hands covering ears. The drawing was simple but devastating. Clara dropped to her knees. Is this from her mind? Did this happen to her? Miss Cora gently held the girl's hand. Maybe she's showing something that lives inside her, or something that passed soul to soul. The silence thickened like smoke. And inside that silence, there was a quiet cry for help. The next day, Clara came back with a different expression. I went through her old papers, the therapy records, her medical files. She handed Miss Cora a folder with scribbled notes and unfinished evaluations. They never understood my daughter, she said, eyes brimming. They tried to box her into tests, charts, but no one wanted to hear what she was trying to say. Cora examined the pages slowly, because listening hurts. Because hearing the invisible takes more than ears. It takes courage. Their eyes met. In that moment, something unspoken passed between them. Luna played outside with dry leaves, arranging patterns on the ground. Cora approached and asked softly, "Do you want to show me something?" Luna made the sign for wait and then pointed to the sky. A moment later, lightning flashed. Cora smiled. "You feel things before others see them, don't you?" Luna nodded gently. Then she drew in the dirt. 3 circles with a line running through them, the exact pattern from Amara's final letter. "This isn't just memory," Cora whispered. "This is continuation. She's saying the story isn't over." That night, Miss Cora wrote in her journal, "This child's hands carry the answers I've missed for 20 years." She closed the notebook carefully and laid on top of it an old photo of Amara holding the same doll Luna now kept close. Clara, sitting on the porch, asked, "What if she's showing us something about her own past too? Something we haven't Seen yet? Cora didn't look away from the night sky. Then maybe. She's the bridge between two wounds begging to be healed. The wind picked up, carrying a truth too heavy for words. They both knew Luna's next gesture would change everything. The next morning, Luna wouldn't speak to anyone. She sat on the floor with the doll in her lap and began making a new motion, firm, repeated, intense. Miss Cora stopped mid-step and dropped to her knees. It was the final gesture Amara made. Just before she vanished. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The quiet of the morning shattered with a muffled cry from the living room. Clara rushed in to find Luna curled in the corner, clutching her doll tightly, eyes locked on the doorway. The nanny, Emily, stood nearby trying to explain. I just told her to stop tapping the window, that's all. But Luna's eyes said something else. There was fear there, not fresh but old. A fear that had returned. Miss Cora watched silently from across the room, observing Luna's gestures, arms crossed over her chest, then the sign for darkness. The same sign she'd used 3 nights before. Clara scooped her daughter into her arms. It's okay, sweetheart. It's okay. But Luna kept repeating the movement. It wasn't just habit. It was a plea. And a warning. Miss Cora knelt beside the girl. Luna, do you want me to see? The child gave a faint nod. Cora reached out, and Luna touched her fingertips to Cora's in a slow, deliberate gesture. Then, she pointed at Emily. What was that? The nanny asked nervously. Some kind of game? Miss Cora stood slowly. No, that was an accusation. Emily's face hardened. That's ridiculous. She doesn't even speak. Clara tried to intervene, but her voice faltered. She didn't want to believe it. But she couldn't ignore the scream in her daughter's silence. Maybe. Her voice just doesn't use words. Later, alone in the house, Miss Cora pulled out old photos of Amara from a cedar chest. In many, the girl used hand signs similar to Luna's, but one photo made Clara gasp. Amara sitting in Cora's lap, both hands over her eyes, just like Luna that morning. This sign means I don't want to see, Cora explained. She used it when something frightened her. Clara turned to look at her daughter, now playing quietly with leaves. Her throat tightened. Do you think Emily hurt her? Cora paused. I can't say for certain, but I know this children's souls speak. And when we silence those souls, they find another way to scream. Clara walked out without a word and headed to the car. In Emily's bag, she found a small notebook filled with routine notes, medications, schedules, errands. But one loose scrap of paper caught her eye. Shaky handwriting. She saw me. No name, no date, just that. Clara returned to the house holding it. Miss Cora stood waiting on the porch. Your daughter is trying to set something free, and maybe you're the only one who can open that door. That night, Clara sat beside Luna and showed her a picture of Amara. Do you know this girl? Luna stared at it, then reached out and touched the image. Then she pointed to her forehead. Cora leaned in. That means the image stayed inside. Luna placed her doll in the center of the room and began to spin slowly around it, humming a soft, eerie sound, more lament than lullaby. It was ritualistic, spontaneous, uncoached. She's retracing something that got stuck, Cora said. Every gesture is an echo, and echoes only exist when something was said and never heard. The next day, Clara picked Luna up from school early and watched from a distance as Emily approached. What she saw shattered her heart. Luna backed away, covered her ears, and turned her face. Emily reached for a hug, and the girl trembled. Clara ran toward her. Don't touch her. Emily stammered, trying to explain, but Clara wasn't listening. It's over. You're never coming near her again. Neighbors peeked out from porches and windows. Across the street, Miss Cora stood still, watching as if she'd always known this moment would come. Her eyes were heavy with pain, but also peace. Now she's starting to break free. At the police station, Clara filed a report. Her story was met with doubt until she showed the gesture records, the drawings, and photos of Amara. The officer, a tired-eyed black woman, held up the paper with the triple circle symbol and said, "I've seen this before." In a case from 20 years ago. Cora and Clara exchanged a look. Neither could speak. Luna, asleep in Clara's arms, made gentle hand movements, slow, rhythmic, as if she were still telling a story that had yet to be heard. A story just now stepping out from the dark. That night, Luna made the sign for locked door with one hand and traced Amara's spiral with the other. Miss Cora held her face and whispered, "You opened her door. Now let's open yours." Clara hadn't slept all night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her daughter curled up in fear, fingers pressed over her ears, eyes begging for help without a single word. For the first time in years, Clara felt true guilt, not for her choices as a mother, but for the absences she pretended not to notice. That morning, she sat on the porch with a clear decision. She would watch. No accusations, no assumptions, just eyes wide open. Right on time, Emily arrived, smiling as usual. "Ready for another fun day, Luna?" The girl hesitated, glanced at her mother, and stayed silent. The tension was subtle. But for someone who had learned to hear the silence, it was deafening. Clara followed them to the backyard and watched from the window. Emily tried to hold Luna's hand. She pulled away, then offered a toy. Luna turned her face. And then it happened. Emily, unaware she was being watched, muttered under her breath, "You really are weird, just like that old lady." Luna curled up and began to rock. Clara burst through the door. "Step away from her, now," Emily laughed nervously. "Oh, come on. She's just a strange little kid." But Clara wasn't smiling. "You just lost your job, and with luck, your freedom." The shouting drew attention. Neighbors began to gather. One of them, an elderly man who had watched in silence for years, grabbed Emily's arm when she tried to leave. "You're not going anywhere," he said. Miss Cora arrived shortly after, called by a neighbor. She saw Luna in her mother's arms and said nothing. She simply laid a hand on Clara's shoulder. Now the eyes have opened. Police were called. Emily was taken in for investigation. That day, the whole neighborhood seemed to exhale, as if a curtain had been pulled back from every window. At the station, Luna met with a child psychologist while Clara and Cora gave their statements. What had seemed unbelievable weeks ago was now being taken seriously. Luna's gestures, once dismissed, were now recognized as evidence. The recordings, the drawings, the repeated signs, all were re-examined with new eyes. The lead officer mentioned an old case. The girl back then, she used symbols too, but no one listened. Cora closed her eyes. A memory of Amara on the porch, doll in hand, flashed like lightning through her mind. Outside, Luna approached a female officer and made the sign for locked door. Then another, hand covering her mouth, pointing upward. Cora's eyes filled with tears. "She's showing us where and what." Clara knelt down and looked into her daughter's eyes. "You remember this, sweetheart?" Luna didn't speak. She simply touched her chest, as if carrying something buried deep. Miss Cora knelt beside her. "You don't have to carry this alone. Your courage is stronger than fear." That evening at home, Luna played with stones on the living room rug. She arranged 3 rows, then placed a star in the center. Clara and Cora watched in silence. "It's the same layout from Amara's letter," Cora whispered. "Except now, the star is in the middle," Clara understood. Luna wasn't just repeating a story, she was finishing it. Or perhaps healing it. Time, cruel as it is, sometimes stitches back what seemed lost. And in that quiet room, 2 women and 1 child began to rewrite a past that didn't belong to them, but now asked to be retold. The next morning, reporters showed up. The story had spread. Nonverbal autistic child reveals abuse through symbolic language. Elderly woman helps decipher decades-old case. Cora sat on the porch and declined interviews. This story isn't mine, it's hers. Clara, however, decided to speak. Holding Luna in her lap, she gave a short statement to the local news. She wasn't saved by modern techniques. She was saved by a woman this community chose to ignore. Cora smiled not with pride, but with peace. The kind of peace that comes when a door long shut finally opens. That night, Luna asked for paper and a pencil. She drew 3 figures holding hands, a little girl, a woman in a floral dress, and another with her hair tied up. Underneath, 1 word written carefully, with effort, us. Asterisk asterisk, Miss Cora's house woke to a swarm of news vans and reporters. Cameras clicked, microphones hovered, voices buzzed outside. But inside, nothing had changed. Tea simmered on the Mayo stove, dolls sat quietly on the couch, and Faith clung gently to the cracked walls. Cora, dressed in her oldest floral gown, tied her lace scarf, and sat on the porch. There was no anger in her eyes, only a deep, ancestral weariness. 20 years she waited for someone to finally say, she was right. Inside, Clara helped Luna get ready. The girl held her drawing notebook tightly. Today, she would speak. To the world her way, the way everyone had ignored. Until now. At the community center, a press conference was hastily assembled. Journalists, therapists, parents, community leaders all gathered to hear about the child who spoke with her hands, and the woman who listened when no one else would. Clara stood at the microphone, voice steady. My daughter wasn't saved by modern tech. She was saved by attention, by time, by respect, and by a woman everyone called strange. A murmur swept the crowd. Miss Cora stood tall, asking for no praise. When they called her to the stage, she declined the mic. She chose silence. And in that silence, the room finally heard her. Investigation confirmed. Luna had endured neglect and intimidation at the hands of the nanny. No physical wounds, but emotional evidence, undeniable now. Her gestures, long dismissed, were officially recognized as language. During the hearing, the judge quoted Miss Cora's words, "What isn't heard will find another way to scream." That sentence appeared on school murals, news articles, awareness posters. Luna received professional support, but Cora remained involved, co-leading sessions with therapists. The method she once built for Amara, ignored by all, was finally being taken seriously. The sessions took place in Cora's backyard. Children of all ages sat in circles, touching leaves, stones, chimes, drawing with their fingers in the moist earth. Some didn't speak, others shouted, but all of them were seen. Luna, notebook in hand, helped the others understand gestures. She had become a bridge between pain and care. She's not healed, but she's safe, Clara said, and for any mother, that was already a miracle. One day, during the session, a woman appeared at the gate. About 40, hair pulled back with a scarf, eyes glossy with tears. In her hands, an old, faded envelope. "My name is Yara. I found this in my mother's things. I think it belongs to someone here." Miss Cora opened it with trembling fingers. Inside, a letter from Amara, one she had never seen. The handwriting was clear and steady. At the bottom, a line read, "For the woman who saved me in silence." Cora covered her mouth. It was Amara's last letter, but not her final message. In the following days, Cora and Clara began to trace the letter's origin. Yara explained her mother had worked at an old adoption shelter, now closed. Children with unusual profiles had often been reassigned with new identities. Digging through old records, they found the file. a girl adopted 20 years ago. The name was different, but the date and description matched Amara's. A DNA test was ordered. It would take days, but Miss Cora already knew. Deep down, she had always known. Still, she prayed. On her knees, holding Amara's photo, she whispered, "If she's alive, let me touch her once more." That Friday, the phone rang. The answer came in one sentence: "It's her." Cora didn't cry. She just closed her eyes, like someone who's finally seen sunlight pierce stained glass after years of darkness. That afternoon, a young woman appeared at the gate, light brown skin, tight braids, eyes carrying both pain and hope. She paused, then ran into Cora's arms. The hug was long and wordless. Cora held her face gently. "Do you remember?" Amara nodded and made a simple gesture, the same one from her letters. It was enough. It was everything. From the porch, Luna watched quietly, doll in her lap. She made the sign for star, then the sign for found. Cora looked from Amara to Luna and whispered, "The light found each of you. Right on time." Miss Cora's backyard, once quiet and lonely, now pulsed with soft chimes, whispered laughter, and curious little hands brushing through leaves. It wasn't a school. It wasn't a clinic. It was a space where children could simply be wordless. Or not. Luna always sat in the same corner, notebook in her lap, eyes alert. Amara, now grown, was there too, not as someone with answers, but as someone who knew what it meant to be forgotten. Miss Cora stood at the center of the circle, guiding. The moments with the calm of someone who learned long ago that you don't have to shout to be heard. She spoke rarely, but when she did, everything stopped. The case's impact sparked invitations from across the country, universities, nonprofits, clinics. But Miss Cora declined most. "This isn't about lecturing, it's about caring." It was Clara who had the idea to create a small community space right next to the house. A place to welcome, to listen, to guide. The local church offered nothing. But mothers, volunteers, and even some old neighbors pitched in with bricks, paint, and time. In a few months, the sewing center rose, its name suggested by Luna, who wrote it herself in uneven letters and filled the sign with colorful spirals. On opening day, there were no speeches, just soft songs, warm tea, and hands held tight. Miss Cora wore her usual floral dress. Luna tucked a flower behind her grandmother's ear. Amara stood beside Clara, quietly holding her hand. The most powerful moment came when Luna stepped to the center of the room and drew the triple circle symbol with white chalk. Then she pointed to Miss Cora, to Amara, and to herself. 3 generations, 3 listeners. Time somehow had made peace with itself. A nonprofit from the north offered funding to expand the work. And more than that, they asked Miss Cora to train teams of therapists in other cities. "What you created isn't just a method," they said. "It's ancestral wisdom." She smiled with her eyes. "I didn't create it alone. Pain taught me. Faith carried me." She accepted with one condition, that every new center have a grandmother's room, a space where listening mattered more than diagnosing, where experience was honored, not dismissed. Clara joined the project, handling logistics. Her name, once attached to scandal, was now linked to healing. "I've learned more from my daughter's silence than from any course I've ever taken." Amara decided to study psychology and began designing support materials based on what she lived through. "I want other children to know that what wasn't said can still be understood." Luna, quiet as ever, became a national symbol of a new way to listen. And Miss Cora? She still swept the porch, brewed her tea, and looked at the sky. Her time was no longer counted in minutes, but in memories mended. One late afternoon, during a mother-child session, an elderly woman raised her hand. "I just want to say thank you. Before I met you, I thought my grandson was a punishment. Now I see, he's a song. One I'm still learning to sing. The silence that followed was broken by soft claps and quiet tears. Miss Cora stood, walked over, and embraced her. You just sang the first verse. In that moment, no theory could explain what passed between them, only the miracle of being truly heard. That night, as the last candle dimmed and the house quieted, Miss Cora wrote in her journal, I wasn't born for noise. I was born to translate the whispers of those the world forgot. She tucked the book away, blew out the light, and sat still, until she felt a gentle touch on her hand. Luna stood beside her, doll in arms. She made a new gesture, a circle in the air, followed by 2 taps to the heart. What does that mean, my flower? Cora asked softly. Luna leaned her forehead to hers and whispered her first spoken word, thank you. It was quiet, but it was a voice. And it was the loudest sound Cora had ever heard. Final hook. The next day, Cora received a letter in the mail. No return address. Just one sentence, handwritten. There's another who needs to be heard. She's on her way. Asterisk, asterisk. The letter arrived. Without sound or warning. It rested on Miss Cora's doormat like it had been placed by hands that understood the weight of time. She read the short sentence again and again. There's another who needs to be heard. She is on her way. That same day, Cora sat on the porch and waited. The sky was overcast, and the breeze carried the scent of damp earth, the same scent that filled the air the morning Amara disappeared. Clara came by with Luna in the late afternoon. You felt it too? Cora nodded. The silence of that moment wasn't empty. It was expectant. At 6:14 p.m., a modest car pulled up. A young woman stepped out, holding a worn bag and a crumpled envelope. Her name was Eliza. Light brown skin, deep-set eyes, natural hair loosely tied. Her posture carried both urgency and fatigue. I found this in my mother's things. She passed last week. Miss Cora took the envelope. Inside was an old adoption form with Amara's name printed at the bottom. My mom told me that was the name of my sister, one she never managed to find again. The world tilted. Clara touched Cora's arm. Luna, across the yard, stopped drawing. Eliza glanced at the house, then at the doll in Luna's lap, and softly whispered, I had one just like that. Cora invited her in. The envelope was placed on the table like an offering. Slowly, Eliza shared what she knew. She grew up in foster homes before being adopted at age 6. She never felt whole. Always sensed something or someone was missing. A month before she died, her adoptive mother confessed she once tried to adopt 2 sisters, but only one was placed. She said I had a sister who was taken and might still be alive. The silence grew heavy. Miss Cora clutched the envelope like it held a photograph from tomorrow. Clara called Yara, who returned to the closed-down adoption center. A clerical error had altered Elisa's records, but the profile matched. The drawings, the dates, even the spirals, stars, and door symbols Eliza had sketched as a child. A new DNA test was ordered. I don't even know what I'm looking for, Eliza said, staring at Luna. But when I saw that doll, something inside me tightened. Miss Cora held her hand. Sometimes the body remembers what the mind forgets. You're not looking, you're being called. The days that followed were filled with quiet waiting. Luna and Eliza began connecting, not through speech, but through drawings. The 2 of them sat cross-legged, mapping out shapes, symbols, paths. Amara watched, eyes full. When I ran away from the center, they told me I was an only child. I believed them. I had to. The day the test arrived, Miss Cora brewed chamomile tea and lit candles. The envelope was delivered at 4:02 p.m. Everyone gathered at the community center. Clara opened it. She didn't need to read it aloud. The quiet smile in Cora's eyes said everything. Eliza was Amara's sister, a forgotten star, a piece of a sky that had kept shining, even apart. Their hug was clumsy, cautious, and forever. Luna drew 3 figures surrounded by circles, and above them, a single star glowing alone, watching over them all. She knew, Clara whispered, from the beginning. Cora held the drawing and nodded. Because sometimes a child's soul sees what time tries to hide. The press never heard this part. There were no headlines. This wasn't for the world. It was for sisters, for grandmothers, for stars returning to each other. The next week, during the story circle, Luna made a new gesture, one they hadn't seen before. A circle with her fingers, followed by a line drawn straight across the floor. "Is it a path?" Amara asked. Luna nodded. Eliza smiled. "Where does it lead?" Luna made the sign for inside, then rested her head on Cora's shoulder. It wasn't a direction, it was a return. Cora closed her eyes and smiled. The path doesn't take us far, it takes us home. And on that earth-covered floor, a new page was written, not loud, not public, but powerful enough to heal 1,000 untold stories. That night, Luna placed the doll on the porch, lit a candle beside it, and left a small note in crook handwriting. "Thank you, Grandma. The star is home now." It wasn't a miracle that turned that old wooden house into a sanctuary for the unheard. It was the quiet resilience of a woman who chose to stand firm, even when they called her crazy, a witch, or simply the strange lady in the window. Miss Cora never shouted. She never demanded respect. She simply listened, with her eyes, with her hands, with her time. And sometimes, listening is the greatest act of faith a person can offer. Because when you listen to someone's silence, you make space for their pain to rest. And pain, when it finds shelter, begins to heal. Luna didn't start speaking the way people expected. But she learned to communicate through movement, drawings, and patterns, once mistaken for randomness, now recognized as full living language. Clara, on the other hand, found her daughter not through speech, but through presence. She realized that being there matters more than being perfect. And some mothers only truly meet their children when they learn to listen with their hearts. Miss Cora showed them that. With leaves, dolls, gestures, and patience. And the little girl who lived in shadows began to face the world. With courage, the community, once so quick to judge, had to fall silent before the truth. The same pulpit that condemned her now stood speechless before justice. Because when light slips in through the most unlikely cracks, it softens even the sharpest stones. Miss Cora never apologized for who she was. She simply showed what she could do with what she carried: memory, faith, and the ache of a granddaughter never forgotten. And it was in that empty place inside her that she found room to save another child. Perhaps that's what kept her praying, night after night. The hope that love, even wounded, still heals. Amara came back. Not like the dream Miss Cora had for all those years, running through fields with braids and laughter, but as a young woman with familiar eyes, healed scars, and a life lived in another direction. They recognized each other without rush, without demands. And in that reunion, there were no expectations, only acceptance. Luna was there too, sitting between them, hands folded in her lap. A granddaughter found, a daughter rescued, and a grandmother who could finally lay down the weight of 20 years into the arms of redemption. And now, maybe it's your turn. How many people do you know who carry a silence no one wants to hear? How many wounds are hidden in gestures, downcast eyes, or children drawing spirals in the dirt? Sometimes the heroes of a story don't wear capes or speak with booming voices. Sometimes they are women who brew tea, hum softly, and know exactly where to keep every memory the world discarded. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because the world needs more eyes that see, and ears that understand even what isn't said.